Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember if it was Plato or it was Aristotle. One of them, one of these two, said that you can tell how free a society based on the number of laws and regulations it has. If it has too many, that means you're controlled and your freedom is more limited. If you don't have that many, that means there are a lot of things that you can do. But on the other hand, I would use my father's description, one of the descriptions of how the communist law works versus the, poor dad, Western free world works. And he said, well, in United States, outside, in the Western country, the free world, he got a chance to see the free world too. So in the free world, you're told what you can't do. So 1, 2, 3, and the rest that is not mentioned in the law, you can do. He said, on the other side, in the communist, where we live, he said, you're told what you can do. And the rest means you can't do. So here we have an example of how we get more regulated and more laws are made and made and made. That's a point beyond which a civilization or the civilized course of a society becomes tyrannical, becomes, controlled, more and more controlled with evil intent. You can feel it, that if you're not allowed to ride your bike without a helmet, that's a problem over there. You see, probably the Westerners would say, well, you can ride a bike. Then even mention it. Nothing. The only thing I would say, riding the bike is riding like being an, a vehicle. That's it. With no engine. So you have to abide the laws of the traffic. That's it. And the communists would be, no. You have to have a helmet while you ride the bike. You have to have knee pads. You have to have elbow pads. You have to have a mouth guard or teeth guard or whatever that is. You can't ride the bike only between these hours or these days. Things that you say, what is this? Why is it necessary? Well, for safety, for your safety. I mean, the reason doesn't really matter. It's the fact that some people, humans like you and I, tell you what to do. Why? Because they care for you and they know better. And you somehow have to listen to these guys. And you vote them in the office, by the way. So, what do we have here? We have here an example coming from the European Union. And this is, as double speak. It's called the EU Media Freedom Act. So what would they tell you? Freedom Act. That means, wow, these guys are going to let us be free. No, it's not that. Remember, it was the Enduring Freedom, the Operation Enduring Freedom. So you have to endure something, freedom. It was, or we bring freedom and democracy to Iraq. Remember that one? Okay, by doing what? So anyway, let's go and read this article. Sputnik. And I'm quoting, journalism is not a crime. Experts lambast EU Media Freedom Act. So you might think by this that, hey, we're going to have freedom. Woo-hoo, we can all speak and speak up and speak out and be, freedom of speech. No. The European Media Freedom Act envisage installing spyware on journalists' phones for the sake of national security. And we are going to have the cowards in our society that do not live their lives, but only survive. They will impose that on the rest of us who want to live our lives by voting us. And there's more like them than us. So that's going to pass. That's how it works. And these guys who stay in the basement in front of a computer, maybe that's working, not going outside because the virus or the allergies or I don't know what else, and they get all the boosters already, which is good. Good for them. They can take how much they want. I don't want them to make me somehow do what stupid things they want to do. Okay? That's all. You can do whatever you want to eat shit, eat. Don't make it mandatory for me to eat. They already make it. They're agreeing with this kind of meat from the, I don't know, mosquitoes and insects. You eat it if you want. They probably don't even eat it. They want me to make. They want to make me eat that. I don't want that. The same. Oh, we're gonna make the electric cars. I'm not gonna get that one. But let's go back to these guys. So, for national security, the Media Freedom Act envisions installing spyware on journalists' phones. Now, Sputnik sat down with some international observers to discuss how the provision correlates with the Act's name and basic European principles. Well, European principles. And I'm quoting, "There is no legitimate reason to spy on journalists." End quote. Lucy Commissar. Oh, that's not a good name. Not a good name. Change it. An investigative journalist based in New York told Sputnik, and I'm quoting, "Remember, this law targets people identified as journalists, not as spies or terrorists or criminals. Journalism is not a crime unless Julian Assange does it. The real reason is to protect government officials from journalists reporting on officials' misguided policies, abuses, and corruption. It's quite ironic in view of the EU's self-congratulatory rules trumpeted as protecting people's data from tech companies. Stealing data when a company does it is bad. Stealing audio and written text when a government does it is just fine." End quote. Tightening screws on free press. The bloc's new media regulation was proposed by the European Commission, EC, Emil Kosman, in September 2022. The initial draft stipulated that European governments could deploy software on journalists' devices on case-by-case basis, end quote, to ensure national security or to investigate, and I'm quoting, "serious crimes," end quote, such as terrorism, human or weapon trafficking, exploitation of children, murder, or rape. Well, if you go to a judge and you get a warrant, you can do that, obviously, in order to investigate something. But you put it in the European Commission, in the freedom something, case-by-case basis. And who decides that? Anyway, I would like to decide that. Well, let me know, you're too... However, in May 2023, Politico obtained a document penned by French policymaker who called to narrow journalists' immunity under the new EU rules and strike what they called, and I'm quoting, "a fair balance between the need to protect the confidentiality of journalists' sources and the need to protect citizens and the state against serious threats." I like when they say... when they use this, when they say fair or safety, who can be against that? Nobody. So they get you on board. Weasels. According to the media, Paris' argument was accepted by the EC. As a result, the draft legislation was amended to loosen safeguards for the journalists' immunity. The EC's original list of serious crimes, end quote, allowing surveillance on reporters, was replaced by a broader 2002's Council framework decision of the European arrest warrant consisting of 32 offenses. The development triggered a storm of criticism from European journalist organizations, NGOs, and activist groups. In particular, the European Federation of Journalists, representing over 300,000 members, denounced the EU's move as a blow to media freedom. Well, remember this. When you hold this protest and all that, and blah, 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 they mean almost nothing. And I'm going to give you I will back my statement. I will use the evidence by using an example. Remember Emmanuel Macron? Yes, you do. A smart guy, but a weasel guy. He is the president of, used to be Great Nation under this guy. Now is... Anyway, so, well, what? Just walk through Paris and say hello, au revoir, and whatever. So, remember Macron. Remember the Pension Act, the raising the pension, the retirement age from 62 to 64, I think. Remember? The population was 80% against it. Opinion polls. The law was supposed to be voted in their little houses, parliament and so on. And what did one guy do, which is Macron? He decided he's going to bypass everything. Ignore the will of the people. 80%, according to the polls, ignore the parliament, the elected officials of the people, and he decided he's going to pass it. He's going to sign it, and it's going to be a law. That was brought into the question, but everything was legal. And Macron, according to the French law, didn't do anything illegal. And you had protest over protest over protest over protest. The French came with their wine, with their cheese and bread, and they yelled and they did everything they could. And what happened? See this hand? This is going to go in a movement up and down. That happened. Nothing. And I told you nothing will happen. The same with yellow vests. Nothing. Macron was outside being, by someone and say, these guys are still there. I'm just going to sign it legally. So yes, guys, you can go over there. You can, the 300,000, I just showed, they're going to do what? Against what? Against whom? They're not going to do anything about it. They can't. I don't want to be so, negative about it, but you learn from historical examples. What can you do? Many other things, but not that. The EFJ warned that empowering EU governments to install spyware on journalists' devices under the guise of national security would in particular have a chilling effect on whistleblowers and confidential sources. Well, since the 18th century, when the newspaper began to circulate, the secrecy of sources have been sacrosanct. End quote. Professor Alice Cashmore, Cashmore, woo! The author of Screen Society and an independent media analyst told Sputnik, and I'm quoting again, journalists have over generations respected this and steadfastly refused to reveal sources. As recently as 2005, Judith Miller, a New York Times journalist, was sentenced to prison for not revealing sources. So it is an extremely important principle in the media. End quote. So, for their part, the British media warned that despite the UK's leaving the EU, the bloc's legislation in its current form poses a surveillance risk to British journalists residing in the EU. European Digital Rights, a network of digital rights advocates, again, urged the European Council to reconsider the registration's spyware provisions. They don't give a damn. So the proposed legislation will not only infringe the freedom of press, but contribute to further erosion of the public trust in the Western mainstream media, which is increasingly merging with the government and elitist structures, according to Sputnik interlocutors. They're all there. So, the two cataclysmic events of the COVID pandemic, I'm quoting, and the Ukraine conflict have changed the media's relationship with the governments, end quote, explained Cashmore. And I'm quoting again, one important effect is what we might call a nurturing of the media. I mean by this that news organizations are now so reliant on governments for intel that they have been deterred from being critical of administrations. In the West, the phrase is "do not bite the hand that feeds you," end quote. Well, the problem is we are heading towards that. We are there anyway. It's like a sign. When Tucker Carlson still had his show on Fox News, he used to say, and he used to make a little montage of certain kind of words that no one would use them, but at one point, let's say something occurred, you had an Biden official coming out and say, okay, this is a, cataclysmic situation. Now the word cataclysmic something would be in almost all the mainstream medias. You got some little pundits over there saying the cataclysmic, and it's like an order. He made a lot of videos just pointing out, I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, about showing what's going on. This guy just grabbed the term and they just promote it like keyword. So it's not only that. These guys are just telling us about the intel whistleblower, anonymous sources from the government. That's like misinformation, disinformation right there. But you have to, as I said many times, when I talk about news and I'm looking at articles and I'm reading them, I feel like I'm in a dark, little narrow passage in a street, two walls side, and it's kind of dark, and I have to walk through this to go wherever I'm going. And this is about, let's say, 15 yards, right? So let's say about 45 feet or something. So it's kind of long and it's dark. You can't really see anything. But you know that a lot of people take shit on that gang. Over there, a lot of shit. You can smell it. And you know it's there, but there's no way around it. So you have to go and get over there. Like I have to pick news and articles to discuss them, but I don't know which one is lying too much and which one is not lying that much. The keyword is lying. Yes. And so you know you're going to step on some doo-doo. The problem is you don't want to be like, skidding all around. And you're going to just jump and you just try to figure out and you pack, jump, whoop, you slide on one, Jesus Christ, and then you get another one. And at the end you feel like you're on ice skates. Why? Because you stepped on them. So you try to step on as little doo-doo as you can. But the same here. When I read articles, I don't know, they comes from an anonymous source. Psst, really? This is like you hear a rumor. That's a rumor. You don't know if that's true or not. If someone comes and tells you works for, let's say, DHS, and comes and tells you, I don't reveal my name, you don't even know, you can't verify if what that person said is true. Why? Because you don't have other three to confirm it. Because that's how you verify a piece of news in the intelligence community. It used to be, I don't know if it's the same way here. If you got an information, you have to verify with 2 or 3 sources that are not related to one another. And when that gets confirmed, hey, he's got weapons of mass destruction. Oh, he's got weapons of mass, oh, he's got, then you come and say, yes, it's a reliable information. Otherwise, anyone can say whatever they want to say. That's the way it used to be. I think it's still because we think we still have brains and those rules still stand. Until these guys come and say, well, I don't like that one, I don't like that, I think that's not inclusive. So anyway, my friends, here is the new regulations for the European Union for your safety. And that's going to go here as well, for our safety. For our safety, these guys can do a lot of things. Look at me. When I lived in the communist system, a lot of people said, oh, we are controlled by them, we're controlled by that. We were controlled like this compared to how much you're controlled here. You're controlled here almost any second, right now. Right now. Let me give you a little story. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story. I went to Canada. And when I went to Canada, I used to, when you go over the bridge, drive over the bridge to go to Canada, you used to pay the, toll, cash. You could pay it cash, credit card, and so on. You could pay cash. Paying cash, let's say they would not communicate with anybody, even though they have cameras and so on. They know when you get out of US. They will know only when you come back in. If they don't communicate, the Canadians with the Americans. Hey, he left the country, pop, okay. When you come back, hey, he entered the country, send it to the Canadians. All right? But in this case, now, if you're going to go, they have another system, another way of controlling and knowing what you're doing. You know what? With a credit card. They change it from being able to pay cash only with credit card. So when you're going to cross the border, you have to pay with credit card. Where I go, at least. You pay with credit card. That means when these guys want to find out, as they found out a lot of things in January 6th, if you remember, they verified by credit card use. They got allowed to get access to the credit card use, the company who was from outside and used the credit cards inside Washington, D.C. The same here. These guys now know through that way how you get out, when you got out, and when you return. When you return, the Canadians still take cash. But when you come back in the United States of America, you give your passport or your ID. So they know when you entered. But now they know exactly when you got out and how long you stayed over there. It's just just a gimmick. So again, more and more and more and more control. Like right now. Do you think it's just you and I here? I strongly doubt that. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.